Hey, welcome to part 2 of Cafe Sola's on-the-go segment for this day, November 10th, 2019. Just put the timestamp on there so that if you're watching this at some future date, you'll know. You won't have to look at the published date. So it's been a great day. And of course, as you saw, Of course, as you probably saw in the first video, I was driving to St. Paul. This is still going to be called On-the-Go Drive to St. Paul because it's part 2. But it's really the On-the-Go Drive home from St. Paul segment. You'll notice that I'm not wearing my coat anymore. That's because the temperature here in this part of Texas has creeped up to a very pleasant 75 degrees to the point where you actually have to run the air conditioning just a little bit. No big deal. So I get there. As you noticed, I was getting close. I was starting to talk about kind of the Cafe Sola journey. I'm going to make that a separate video because I want to sit down, I want to think about it, I want to remember how all this really came out without trying to remember it while I'm driving. So instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about Pastor Wolfmiller's Bible class, which was teaching Christian basics. And it's interesting that he's doing a class, an adult class, on teaching Christian basics. I find that fascinating because a lot of adults get to the state that I think kids get to right after confirmation, where they say, oh, I know what I need to know. I know a lot, whatever. I don't need to keep refreshing myself on the basics. Oh, before this. So I get to St. Paul. I get there a little early, so I go into the parish hall, and I start setting up. I already have permission from the pastor, have permission from the elders to do the recording, which will be a separate video. And one of the ushers comes up to me. His name was Dennis, nice guy. And he's like, hello, Mr. Hogan, welcome back. And I'm like, wait a minute, do you remember me? And the only reason I say that, because I always refer to myself as, you know, the most unforgettable guy, which is weird because I'm doing YouTube videos now and podcasting. But he remembered me, which is always nice and a little surprising, actually a lot surprising. And we had fun chatting, and he let me know that he had seen the previous video that I recorded there and really liked it, which is nice. Thank you, Dennis. I also met several of the elders again, and I got to met him a couple times now. This guy, what's his name again? Oh yeah, William George Metz. He's a nice guy. He's a little bit, we're kind of simpatico a little bit in that we like to kind of, you know, challenge people to think, I think. And nice guy. So if you run across him on Facebook or wherever in one of the groups, yeah, do what you want. But he's a nice guy. I've met him a couple of times now. I really like him. So we're sitting in the class, and I'm sitting there thinking, why Christian basics? Well, this guy, Dennis, or maybe it was Joshua, I can't remember which one now, came up and sat down next to me, and he was explaining to me that what they were going to be doing, and that so I'd know what I would be recording. And it reminded me, of course, of Pastor Wolfmiller's series of videos, which you should check out on his YouTube channel. They're all driving videos like this one, where he's kind of running through Christian basics. Well, this is a little bit more detailed than that. And he said he's going to look to redo all of those as not driving videos, which will be kind of nice. And today, they're already on page 67, so they've been doing this for a little while. I wish I could be there every week, but I can't. And today they were talking about the second article and on redemption. And it's just very, very fascinating. One of the things that came up, which you'll hear in the video when I post that. Oh, by the way, to make sure that you get notified when I post that video, which will be later today or tomorrow probably, make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, so you'll get just a little reminder on your phone that the video has been posted. And it's a recording of Pastor Wolf Miller's Sunday school class, Bible study class. Like things, share things. It's all good. It helps to get things spread around the YouTubes and the Facebook and all the social media. So anyway, he was talking about the what does this mean part of the second article. And it's interesting because it talks about at first it talks about kind of the who Christ is, right? He's true God, true man, and is my Lord. And it also talked about how he's purchased and won me from sin, death, and the devil, and not with gold and silver, but with his holy, precious blood. And he started talking a little bit about how we used to, it seems, even in my memory it seems this way, that we used to have a little bit better way of thinking about ourselves, a little more way we rightly thought about ourselves, where it lines up more with the confession and absolution, and with other things like I, a poor miserable sinner, confess to you, my Lord, that I have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed, by things I've done, things I've left undone. And also, I cannot by my own reason or strength come to you, that kind of stuff. We thought more rightly of ourselves. And he touched on the fact that it seems like now, I'd say a little more than seems like, it is this way now, where, humility, this is all sparked a little bit by Jesus, talking about Jesus' humility and Jesus' exaltation. And there have always been people that have not been very humble, but it sure seems in my memory like most people were more willing to readily admit that they weren't all that in a bag of chips, as they say, that they thought of themselves rightly, which allowed them to therefore think of their neighbor rightly. And by that I mean that they didn't think that they were better than their neighbor. They thought of themselves more equal with their neighbor in terms of both being flawed, both being sinful, both needing what? Both needing forgiveness. So they were a little more aware perhaps of their need for forgiveness, and therefore they were a little bit more willing to more quickly, more readily forgive as they have been forgiven. The world we live in today is a little bit different, isn't it? It's a world where we put the word pride in all capital letters. We attach it to symbols like the rainbow. And we really seem to want to glorify the sin in our lives. I don't know why it says charging stopped, but I'm thinking it's still recording. So I'm going to hit OK, excuse my fingers. But yeah, we're still recording. For some reason it says charging stopped. I think it's because it's getting warm up here. But anyway, you've probably noticed this too. But pride is everywhere. Have we really stopped teaching in the many plethora of Christian churches and denominations out there that the Bible speaks of pride coming before the fall? Not just pride coming before the fall, but pride comes before the fall. It's not good to be prideful. God does what? God gives grace to the humble. Now that does not mean, it says charging stopped again. I don't understand why it keeps saying that. But anyway, forgive me for this. I'll just have to keep turning that off when it pops up. God gives grace to the humble, but you really don't sit there and go out and say, well, then I'm going to go be the most humble person today so God can give me grace. I'll have more grace if I go out and be more humble today. You kind of can decide to be less about yourself today than you were the day before. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's not really what we're talking about. Humility before God, humbleness before God. I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but humility, humbleness before God is having a spirit that says, you're God and I'm not. You're calling this a sin, and I'm not going to tell you it's not a sin. I'm going to confess to you that I have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed. And I'm going to throw myself, to use a courtroom analogy, I'm going to throw myself on the mercy of the court. Have mercy on me. I know I did something wrong. I know I broke your law. I sure hope to learn to not do that ever again. By your grace and your mercy, I may actually come close to that someday. Who knows? Be nice. But have mercy on me, a poor, miserable sinner. Only a humble person can say that. And a humble person isn't the person who makes themselves humble. A humble person is someone who is humbled by God. The Holy Spirit, through the preaching of the law, creating this recognition that you're a sinner in need of a Savior. There is humility there. Don't go out and sin just so you can be humbled more, get more grace, all that kind of stuff. But just acknowledge that you're not God. He's God. You are not. So anyway, he was talking about that, and you'll hear him spend a little bit of time talking about that. And then he talked about the natures of Christ, if I remember correctly. I'm going to flip the page here and maybe show you a diagram. But he talked about the person of Christ being one person, but with two natures. Those natures being the divine nature and his human nature. And I'm going to put this chart up probably somewhere, maybe when I post the video of the class, but it's an interesting chart about the divine nature and the human nature. That was really good. You're going to enjoy hearing that. So anyway, the class was great. I really enjoyed being there, learning some things that are basic to Christianity, Christian basics, but I think, again, we should never become so proud, never should put this pride in the capital letters to say, I have nothing to learn or nothing to relearn. when it comes to Christianity. We should be willing to daily, regularly, be humbled by the Word, to, in a sense, I don't know if I'll say this exactly right, but to put ourselves under the Word. God does that for us, but our human nature, our sinful nature, wants to climb up and be in the magisterial position. We want our reason and our feelings to be in the wrong place. I hear stuff all the time. I hear stuff repeated all the time. I'll hear one pastor talk about it. I'll hear another pastor talk about it. I'll hear certain pastors talk about it over and over again. And I don't say that in a way that should come across as not again. It's really more a matter of thank you. Thank you for not being so tired of teaching this truth that you set it aside for the sake of perhaps teaching me how to balance my checkbook or how to have my best life now. The truths of the Bible are throughout the entire Bible. You cannot, I'm convinced, because I've experienced this in things that I've taught, had heard other people teach. You cannot teach through the Bible and not find the same teachings throughout the Bible, because it's all about Christ. It's law and gospel from beginning to end. It's about justification. It's about sanctification. You just can't. You can say, "Oh, I'm going to teach on the book of Jude, and it's going to be different than the rest of the Bible, and they're going to be different." Yeah, sure, there can be a little thing here and there that's unique to a particular book because it's addressing a particular issue, a particular false teaching or false gospel or false something that was creeping into the church, and they had to write a letter to say, here's the truth. But the truth is always the truth. The truth is always return to Christ. Say to Christ, I am yours, save me. That kind of thing. Return to Christ, the author and perfecter of our faith. So what happened then? Well, class ended and I got to chat with an elder for a while. That was really nice. And then made it to the divine service just in time for it to start. They use divine service setting 2, which is one I'm familiar with but not the most familiar with, so they'll have the same song, the same hymn or the same part of the liturgy that's meant to be sung or whatever, and the notes will be in a different order or different ups and downs and stuff. So it wasn't impossible to follow along, but I'm just not as familiar with divine setting 2 as I am with divine setting 3. I'm just going to admit that right now. And but it was wonderful. The readings for the day were great. The sermon, I don't even know how long it was. I doubt if it was 15 minutes. It was probably more like 20, 25, 30 minutes, but it did not at all drag on, seem too long, which is wonderful. And I'll hook you up with that audio. I'll either play audio from that or I'll link it to the St. Paul website where they post the sermon audio. Very good sermon today. And then, of course, the blessing of the sacrament, the blessing of receiving the Lord's gifts. There's nothing that compares with that. And doing it in such a fine church, a church that doesn't smack of concert hall in any way, shape, or form. A church that has beautiful stained glass. Beautiful stained glass. Pastor Wolf Miller did a video recently on that, and that you should watch that. You should find that and watch that. Just tremendous. You sit there at the altar, and it was interesting in Bible class, Bible study, Pastor Wolf Miller was talking about the humiliation and exaltation of Christ. And you sit there in the sanctuary looking at the altar, and above the altar are three stained glass panels, and the one on the left is the humiliation of Christ, and the one on the right is the exaltation of Christ. And you don't want to get distracted. You want to pay attention. You want to sing, and you want to listen, and you want to do all that you're supposed to do in a divine service, especially receiving the gifts, the word, and the sacrament. But it's just wonderful. Almost to the point where you get this urge to say, all churches should be like that. Why don't more churches have these kind of awesome stained glass windows in them? Why do churches that had awesome stained glass windows in them and taught that would basically visually teach have them anymore? Why did they get rid of them? I remember as a child growing up in a church that had iconography and stained glass and all these kind of things. And kids being kids, you get distracted and you start looking around, but you're looking at going, wow, there's a lamb being sacrificed in that stained glass, and there's a shell with a drop of water coming off of it in that stained glass, and there's a cup and bread in that stained glass. It's just wonderful. Churches should have this stuff. And then teach your people why it's there. Teach them what it's all about. St. Paul's is doing a little bit of a fundraiser right now. I don't know if you have any means to help them out, $5, $10, whatever, but they're trying to raise some funds to basically put protective glass over all of the stained glass. There's some protective glass on the outside of the ones above the altar that I saw, but not on the inside. And then when you drive around the church, you can tell that some of them don't have that protective glass on the outside. And they're really, the purpose of stained glass is not to be seen correctly from the outside, it's to be seen correctly from the inside. So they need to raise a few dollars to put some more protective glass on there to protect that stained glass. So anyway, that's something. I managed to give a little bit today. Bought some Christmas cards with a picture of a nativity stained glass, which will also help. So if you're looking for some good Christmas cards or just some good gift cards and note cards, I'm sure you could go to their website and figure out how to order some of those. Another wonderful thing. So the service was great. Got to say hi to Pastor Wolf Miller after the service and meet a few other people. Met a nice gentleman who's an author, wrote a book about Israel and has a blog. I haven't connected with him yet, but his name was Quentin, and he was a very nice gentleman to meet. I'm going to check out his stuff one day this week. And now I get to drive home. I'm driving through, I want to say Giddings right now. I can't remember. It's a lot of great towns to drive through on the way home from Austin. And that's all I have to say. So it's kind of not ending with a big bang, thankfully, I guess. Could be a big bang, that would be dangerous. But I just hope that you enjoyed this little chat of mine. And again, I will post soon the video and audio of Pastor Wolfmiller's Bible class on teaching Christian basics today. I wish I could be there every week and record it every week. It would be just wonderful to have. And that's all for today. This has been Chris with Cafe Solo, on the go to and from Austin to St. Paul's Lutheran Church. I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you next time.